Alright, let's try this again. That is much better. Hi everybody. Haven't seen me in a while. Not much all has changed. I have insurance now. I'm looking for a doctor. Yay. Uh, Getting a new computer soon. Big yay. Like, oh wow, big time yes. But what I'm actually making this video today about is a friend of mine online posted an article about why men's rights activists should stop calling feminists sexist against men. And it lists a bunch of quote-unquote men's rights issues that feminists care deeply about because they are ingrained in patriarchy. And at its core, feminism is geared towards dismantling the patriarchy in favor of equality. No matter what anyone says. And so it got me to thinking, because whenever I hear or read men's rights activists talking, and whenever someone tries to redirect or co-opt the conversation away from feminism to be about how feminism isn't really equal for everyone, all I hear is me when I was like 13. I was one of those people. It's actually not funny. I think a lot of people don't understand that feminism really is something that we need, and it really is something geared towards true equality. And it's not about putting down men or marginalizing men and their concerns. It's not about female superiority. And as a kid, that was something that I didn't really get. And I realized as I grew up that a lot of my attitudes about feminism and women's rights and everything were impacted very strongly by the media and things that I saw on TV, which, big shock, the media imposed upon me as a child. But it's true. And, as an intelligent, what I'd like to perceive as intelligent woman, and fairly independent thinking, you always kind of see yourself as being above media's touch, but you're not. And it takes a while to realize that, and it takes being willing to stop and listen and expand your education to really understand exactly that sometimes thoughts and feelings and opinions that you hold aren't really yours. And it's a really bizarre thing to realize as an intelligent person, because all of a sudden you realize that someone else's opinions have been coming out of your mouth. And if you're anything like me, you don't like it. You resent that idea completely, because it makes you feel like you're weak and soft-minded. It doesn't. It just means that psychology works. Advertisement psychology. When I was a kid, I remember that I couldn't figure out why, because when I was a kid I was around lots of women. There are lots of women in my family. My mother's the oldest of 6. They had 3 kids. Most people have more than 2 daughters, if they have any sons. We have a lot of women in my family. But there's different age groups. So when I was a kid, there was the kids group. There was the sort of kids, early to late teenager group. There was the adults, and there was the seniors. And in the adults category were women who would date my uncles, specifically, and people around my uncle's age, so that's how I got to know them. And this category of women, adult women, would be pretty much the only people that I would talk to, even as a kid, because my vocabulary far exceeded that of my peers, and so no one wanted to talk to me because I thought I was being a dick. And teenagers, no matter how smart you are, don't want to talk to a 10-year-old. We just don't. It's not that there's anything wrong with you, kid, but it's that you're a kid, and we are finally not kids, and the only way we can really demonstrate that is by not associating with kids. And seniors, I just, what did I have to talk to them about? But women in the adult category that I socialized with were usually in the middle of obtaining a college education, and even if they weren't, they were relatively smart. And despite the fact that my extended family is of a Roman Catholic background, they're a fairly liberal bunch. They're all relatively educated, open-minded, so on and so forth, for the most part. The outsiders are still even more so. And there was one woman in particular who would later go on to become my aunt by marriage, who would talk to me a lot, and I loved her. I loved that she spoke to me. She didn't speak down to me, you know. She engaged me in an intelligent conversation that I was capable of engaging in, and didn't laugh at me or write me off whenever I would disagree or debate with her. She would actually debate with me. And one of the things that she kept asking me, you know, not all the time, but like intermittently, every couple of months, every couple of years, was whether or not I considered myself a feminist. And being of the opinion that feminism was outdated, sexist, and really only for women who were angry for reasons they couldn't understand and had too much time on their hands. Like, that's how I perceived feminism as a kid. I couldn't understand why she was trying to talk me over to the feminazi cult. Because she was cool, and she was intelligent, and she was just awesome. And I didn't get how someone who was so fair-minded and realistic and grounded could consider herself a feminist and wanted me to consider myself one too. I was always insistent in my youth that I wasn't a feminist, I was an equalist, because to me, feminism wasn't about equality. And a lot of that attitude, I realized later on, came from a couple of different things. But primarily from cartoons like The Simpsons, which I love. I do actually really enjoy The Simpsons even today. But they made feminism into a joke. They discredited the movement and women who take the movement seriously as taking everything too seriously, as being needlessly angry, as vilifying and demonizing men. I mean, they make these caricatures of feminists and make them out to be man-eaters. And I had no, and it's not just cartoons, because that would be echoed and repeated throughout all sorts of things. I mean, even TV shows that were meant for kids, one of the tropes in the 90s was there was always that girl who between middle school and high school discovered liberal causes and became that annoying vegan feminist bitch, essentially. And no one really liked her. That girl was always really annoying. But she was also comedic relief, because she was too young to really understand and blah and blah, she was just really uppity. As a really uppity person, I should have identified with this person, but, you know, the social construct that women are supposed to hate women pretty much guaranteed that I hated her. That and it didn't help that the character in general was also written to do really stupid things. But, we were programmed through television to hate women and girls who self-identify as feminists. And we don't realize that that carries over into our attitude about feminism and the feminist movement. Or at least I didn't, not for the longest time. And it doesn't help that, you know, my parents are interesting and very contradictory. They're all wacky liberal and, you know, mom smokes pot and, you know, sex, drugs, rock and roll, woohoo. But they're also incredibly sexist people. I love my parents, and they're incredibly understanding, but they very much rigidly adhere to traditional gender roles. And And one of the things that always used to piss me off growing up was my mom insisting that I have to marry rich. I won't respect my husband if he's not richer than I am. Which I always thought was bullshit for a number of reasons. Um, and then my dad, I love my dad. My dad is intelligent, mostly rational, uh, and he's a very, very good person. He's also an incredible misogynist he, because of his mother, frankly. His mother was a horrible woman who ruined him for all women forever. And it's not like he's super blatant about it, but when you grow up in a household where there's very little respect for women, and there's resentment of women in authority, and on the television they're telling you that any woman who really is fighting for all this is just not really in it for equality, but really in it for superiority, and will treat others awful when she gets into office, that slips into your psyche as a kid, and it takes a while to shake. And I know that one of the reasons why I was so susceptible to it despite my intelligence was because I was an intelligent poor person. I mean, yeah, I'm speaking to you from the internet. I have a webcam and a computer, so how poor can you be? We're not talking like America poor. We're talking like I ate spoiled food and ended up homeless poor. And one of the things that feeds into prejudice is fear. And one of the things that feeds into fear is, and fear and anger, essentially. When I was a kid and my family was in a really bad situation, we are clearly not in as bad a situation, but when we were in a really bad situation, I didn't realize how angry I was getting, mostly because everything that was happening, of course you have this idea, isn't supposed to happen, you know? You're not supposed to be starving, and you're not supposed to lose your home, and you're not supposed to have no idea where your parents are or how to contact them because we're too poor for even a prepaid cell phone. So when we all went our separate ways, I didn't know where my parents were. And I saw a lot of things, most of which were just how the future that was promised me as a child, college and success and all that kind of stuff, would never be within my reach. And it's frustrating because one of the things that is pretty universally stressed is that if you're intelligent, you can go anywhere. What they don't tell you is that if you're intelligent and you're poor, it's not so easy. I mean, really, it's never easy. I don't mean to put it out there like people who have scholarships and work for scholarships didn't earn them. They absolutely did. Frankly, there just should be more money to go around for social programs anyway, but that's an entirely different conversation. It's frustrating and it's terrifying because suddenly you're stuck in this cycle of poverty, and you can't really see any way out, because one of the things that you struggle with as an intelligent youth is being able to look into the future and pretty much predict what's going to happen. It's like, well, my dad technically makes too much money for me to get federal aid, but we're in so much debt that we don't actually have disposable income for me to go to college. So if I'm not going to college, I should get a job. But without a college degree, all I can get is minimum wage. If I'm making minimum wage, I can't actually save up to go to college because minimum wage. So the cycle, it's this loop, an infinite loop that feeds into itself and feeds into itself and feeds into itself, and it's terrifying and demoralizing, and it makes you angry. And I thankfully did not channel this anger into major delinquency. Minor delinquency, yeah, okay. But it also influenced a lot of my attitudes and my willingness to listen to things like social movements. When I was younger, I definitely thought that a lot of people crying racism, a lot of people crying, uh, uh, sexism were just oversensitive and uppity. And when I finally managed to let go of my anger and actually learn about things, actually focus on things, um, the world didn't really become a different place, but how should I put this? I started to understand why sexism and racism has such a strong hold in our country, and a lot of it has to do with this perceived cycle of never going to get anywhere, never going to be able to make it better. And so that's actually one of the reasons why I don't hate MRAs, and I don't hate, um, no, I do hate racists, because actually that was one thing I never really was. But people who buy into rape culture, okay, they make me incredibly uncomfortable and they make me incredibly sad, but I can't hate them because I was them. And because I was them, I also get really uncomfortable when people, in their frustration, start talking about others like there's no hope for them. Like there's no possible way that they can learn their way out of this misguided, angry place. And you can. You can do it. But you're not going to do it with everyone angry at you and insulting your intelligence and telling you that you're just stupid for not getting it. You're not stupid for not getting it. There's other stuff going on that plays into what you perceive things to be. I stopped buying into rape culture when a friend of mine in high school was nearly raped by her boyfriend, and everyone stopped being her friend and was still friends with the boyfriend. Everyone essentially blamed her. They couldn't understand, they couldn't reconcile how this guy could be a monster, rapist. I'm still her friend to this day, but that really made me examine what it was that I thought about rape victims and alleged rape victims. That made me really rethink the things that I would say about a lot of things regarding physical autonomy. My attitudes on feminism also expanded as funny enough, my attitudes on feminism expanded as I began research into human sexual behavior. Because science is a sexist field to go into. Research science especially. But science regarding sex in particular, holy cow, do you learn how much the patriarchy has hold of worldwide consciousness when you're a woman who looks at porn all day and doesn't believe that porn is sexist, at least most porn. That's actually the one thing where I still, there's two schools in feminism, pro-porn, anti-porn. The anti-porn ones are still really loud, and I don't like them. But I have to struggle with not brushing them off because I recognize that still as vestigial sexism in me. I write them off for being misguided, angry feminists. Well, hey, guess what? I'm a feminist too. So, just because they disagree with me doesn't mean that the opinion doesn't have value. They're still wrong, but there's no reason to delve into writing people off just because they disagree with you and are wrong. I think that's really all I've got for now. Just when you encounter someone who you know to be intelligent and an MRA, that's a men's rights activist, or someone who believes that feminism is about female superiority rather than female equality, or equality for everyone, just be patient with them. Some people are genuinely beyond helping, but for the most part, there's other stuff going on there that would make them rather try and tear down a movement built to help everyone than to lend support. And a lot of the time, it's a lack of education on the topic. So,